it is time to introduce our final keynote of today, Angie Arroyo Mendez. She is an associate partner and director of technology at A-Lab. Her expertise lies in the combination of architecture and technology, and she's a driving force for innovation in the construction industry. Examples of this are digital twins and new uses of smart building information combined with IoT. As head of A-Lab's technology department, she works with interdisciplinary teams of developers, engineers, contractors, and technology companies to create new solutions on the path towards future-proof building and cities. One of Angie's key strengths is her ability to connect the dots across disciplines to achieve innovative and ambitious results. Angie, please join us.
Hello.
And the stage is yours.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me. My name is Angie, and I'm very flattered to be the closing keynote, although I can see already in some of you beer written all over your faces, so I will keep it short and sweet. I am here on behalf of A-Lab, which is an architectural studio based in Oslo. We're around 100 architects working in a large range of project types. And I also represent Multiconsult, which is an interdisciplinary company that we are very proud to be part of. It has opened up the world of interdisciplinary collaboration for us to increase our ambition. I am the... All right, thanks. I am the leader of what we call at A-Lab X-Lab. And it's an umbrella for everything that has to do with research and technology. I am the CTO, which is basically the fancy word for I'm the nerd of the office. But we see as architects that the world around us is changing a lot. And we are used to think of the role of the architect as this white canvas, right? We enter into a new discussion about a project, and everybody's afraid of drawing the first line in which direction this is going to go. All the possibilities are on the table. And typically, we are the ones holding the pen, and we are used to have that privileged position. But quite abruptly, we have started experiencing what we call the Industry 4.0, which is the fourth revolution. And I say abruptly because it came suddenly, but also in a really short amount of time. I mean, you think that we had, the first revolution was steam, then you had electricity, robotics, and the Industry 4.0 is a bit less visible because it's actually a network of technologies. You have point cloud, sensor, big data, nevertheless, the word of the moment, AI. And maybe by themselves, these technologies are not so groundbreaking, but the combination of them could be quite powerful. And I want to present you with a question. In the context of all these new possibilities, are there any constraints in your work that actually are not valid anymore? And if you come up with a good answer, feel free to send me a message afterwards. The reality for us is that we are not holding the pen anymore. If anything, are we holding the joystick? And this new source of insights, all this information and technology that is available to us, is really not for the sake of being more efficient or more productive, but it's more about navigating the possibilities of our cities in a way that it starts revealing its more intimate secrets for us. So our intervention is always intentional. It's always almost like acupuncture. And of course, we see that one of the things that is changing around us is the approach to urbanism and density. In a city like Oslo, we know that it's a city built in between the fjord and the forest, which means that there is limited ways to expand. And by 2050, 70% of Norwegians are going to be living in the capital. which means that we have naturally answered to these needs for density, which really large urban developments. Yeah, let's put people together, let's gather the services. It should do. But in the frame of the new discussion, where we are starting to balance nature with urbanism, this is not the answer anymore. And we have been so lucky at A-Lab that we have been part of a lot of these large harborfront developments. Some of them have become destinations that have placed the city of Oslo in the international map. But when we talk about navigating this complexity of the information, what complexity meant before in size, now it's all about connecting different systems that need to be in a symbiosis. So for example, in Grönlikaya, which is one of our projects behind Sorenga, the focus has been on understanding how are we going to balance the fjord life with the urban life and the recreation. And these are the two biggest trends that I see in design right now. Regeneration, and it's a very basic principle that we all learned from our moms when we were little. You leave every place better than you found it. It's not quantum physics. So how are we going to encourage and regenerate the fjord so it actually allows for recreation without threatening the local species? And it goes to which kind of information we need. The other big trend that is happening right now, it's reuse. Of course, the resources are limited, the traditional methods have reached their limits, so we will have to look at understanding where is the potential and focus our efforts in those. So we try to map the building systems and guide the client on how to expand the lifetime of a building as much as possible. This project is from a client of us in Lysaker called Mustang, and they had a really unusual ambition. The building life cycle that we normally consider 60 years, they want to expand it to 100 years. And what does that mean for us as designers, but also as part of the ecosystem? And of course, it's not a matter of gathering data or creating data. We have a tendency to say we need data we can trust. But it's not just about putting the data together. Aggregating data creates a lot of insights because we are used to analyzing every site and finding that uniqueness in an analog way as well. But the possibility of connecting information creates patterns. And it's not always about the amount of the quality of the data, but also how we understand it, how we absorb it and think about it. And I love this example from the Second World War, where they actually collect where the planes are hit by the bullets and decide to use this information to reinforce those parts of the planes, until there was a mathematician in the team that came back and said, what if we are looking at this wrong? What if the places where they are hit the worst are the ones that we don't see because those planes don't come back at all? So we need to look at the data in a critical way, and we are not being served something that is already digested. Again, as architects, we have the possibility to be the first ones in the project and help the client navigate their own ambition. This is a really good example. Oslo Science City is a case study that we developed through Corona. It's a 1.4 million development in Oslo for a study of what is an innovation district. And my first question when I came into the team was, what is the difference between an urban district and an innovation district? How do they look different? And it's basically all about building synergies. So we needed to understand all the information that was available for the site before we could start making those connections. Some connections are new, and some you want to prepare and protect the ones that are already there. So the data that we needed had to be clustered in a smart way that would answer to the ambition of the client. So we have focus areas like health, biology, of course, mobility, and then you can start looking at the information together. It creates a different kind of insights. For us, it was very important to understand what are the premises of the project. So already the municipality had a meaning on how this area was going to be developed. But what we have to ask ourselves is how our project is connected with the city fabric and how it's actually giving something back. Because the projects are not buildings anymore, it's not facades. We are actually providing architecture as a service. So it was very important also to aggregate data of buildings in different phases. Something is existing, something hasn't been designed, but something can be optimized. So it was a great tool for us, not just to understand better the context, but also to be able to gather people around this democratic way to look at the information. Everybody understands the 3D context, so the information needs to be contextualized to make sense. And I was, of course, very happy with everything we had accomplished. Certainly, aggregating data will give us these patterns of behavior. You know, we could understand better, make all the connections. But at the same time, in Ålesund, up in the north of Norway, they were already doing a lot of simulation with their smart city digital twin called Augment City. And they were already calculating the effect of new developments in the carbon footprint, in the mobility patterns, and so on. So it was clear that static data was not going to get us where we needed to be. And to build up on what Annette was showing you earlier, we have limited resources, and the reason why we need this information, we have been building for thousands of years, but the difference now is that we need to monitor and understand the effect of all the decisions that we make before we throw them out there in the world. And the donut economics it's a very simple model, but it goes to tell you a little bit about how we have, if you imagine just a circle with a center, with a hole in the center. And then the inner line is the social limits. What's the least we need to offer for people to thrive? And under that, there's poverty, there's misunderstandings, there's war. So that includes the right of having a political voice, education, and so on. And then on the outer line of the donut, you have the biological limits of the planet that cannot be exceeded. So we have a very limited room for maneuver, where all the decisions that we make today will have an impact on it. And in order to understand that we are staying within that range, we have decided at ALab as a strategy to break down the process in 3 parts, because otherwise it's very overwhelming. It's a lot of things to consider at once. So we have done it in a logical way. The green city is basically to think of nature as one more user of the project. It's a success criteria. Remember, regeneration, regeneration, regeneration. We want to encourage the local species. We want to make sure that humans and nature are in balance. Then it comes the livable city, which is all about social sustainability. And as the previous speakers have been pointing out, is the why. We are not doing this for business only. We can want to create cities that we're proud of, that we want to preserve and pass down the other generations. And of course, the builded city, which is basically circularity. We have no option but to reuse what's already there. And they make sense together. You cannot isolate them. So design is always a trade. You cannot score top on every single aspect. You have to always compromise something. But the difference now is that we need to not only document this compromise, but also make it visible and accessible for all the decision makers in the ecosystem. So in this case, what we're doing, because this project is also a Mustad project, and it's connected with the river. And it was very important that as we think of nature as one of the design success criteria, you want to combine how the wind condition is combined with the daylight conditions, what kind of local species actually thrive in that kind of climate, and facilitate for those spaces and the people to connect. Nevertheless, keep an eye on all the consequences that the building is going to have. Most of us are looking at the carbon, the embedded carbon as our benchmark, but of course it's going to be more complex as we expand and expand our responsibility within the building life cycle. And when we gather this data to understand how small changes can affect the local ecosystem, is actually in order to hold us accountable. Everybody that is in the project, if we had goals of reusing the water, of cleaning it up and combining it in the river, of encouraging the bees and come and be part of the ecosystem, conceptually, we have a tendency to let go on the storytelling along the design. There's a lot of compromises when we get into the construction phase and the authorities' negotiation. So we use all this information to remind people that we have set these goals for ourselves, and of course, we are never going to get there 100%, but how far are we, and in which direction we are going wrong? Another aspect that I love is, of course, this science of movement. We design for nature, as we have learned, but we also design for people. And it's not only how they experience a place or how popular a place it is or how much traffic you have, but it's more about how long people stays there. Because it's on this moment where you create culture and nevertheless economy. And so what does it take for people to want to be there? You have to take into account all these simulations so you can create the future scenarios. And in the end of it, manage to translate it into a program that offers the city what it needs. They're actual citizens. And what I have learned, because we have a department in A-Lab that works with city life on the first floor, is that it's very important to think flexibility in the future. So when you're planning on how people is going to use a space, what kind of offer they need, you have to take into consideration the logistics. My colleagues in Ground Lab are experts on garbage services, on food delivery, on all this kind of logistics around the project that will make it waterproof 2-3 generations from now, because you can only be as flexible as your logistics can support that flexibility. So, as we see how the building life cycle requires more and more involvement from our part, because we were used before to think of our role as just part of the design and construction phase. And I want to challenge something that Annette said, although I have followed and respected her work for many years. She mentioned this, that we all have agreed on, that the BIM model should be the centralized database of every project, that all the information should be fed back into this model, and now we have a lot of new variables and important KPIs to keep an eye on. But I want to challenge that idea, because maybe BIM is not as important anymore, or it's not the place where we're going to make all the decisions as we had hoped for 20 years ago. Maybe that's going to be one more source, and as this building life cycle expands and creates, by the way, more services for us, don't see it as a challenge or as a disadvantage, then we use this BIM information as part of a larger ecosystem of data created through an expanded building life cycle and through a bunch of new information that the Industry 4.0 is providing us with. So it's a bold statement, but I think we are going in this direction. The project and the goals of the project should be the center, and then we need to actually let go of this attachment to BIM as the one truth and connect it to a lot of different data sources, because there is where we're going to create some magic and a value that most of us haven't realized yet. But I want to say that we have to always come into this with a critical eye and try to identify where we are trying to put new technology which is a moving target. I was talking earlier with my friends that you cannot say that you're an expert in technology because then you would be an expert in yesterday's news. This is a moving target. And we try to force these new possibilities to fit all processes that are, of course, not getting us there where we want to be. The change in the process, the change in how we work, at least at A-Lab, we have found an anchor on how to approach, how to evaluate and prioritize, because I have learned that IT and digital tools in general are the biggest expense on a service industry like ours. So the recipe for success for us is every time you have an idea, you should think, am I passionate enough about this? Because again, the kind of services that we provide are very driven by personal interest. You have to believe in it to actually take it all the way, because as technologists, most of us are always swimming against the stream. The second success criteria before you take up or down an idea is, can you be the best at it in the world? And if the answer is yes, is there a market for it? Are the clients actually needing to get this service? Because it's always an asymmetric relation between these three aspects, but it's only when you hit all of that at the same level when you have the possibility to be really, really at your full potential. So now, for us, to be the best, to be competitive, has a lot to do with working efficiently, creating data that people can trust, that actually give us a good reputation, especially as architects. So it has a lot to do with standardization and data management, data quality assurance as well. And economics has a lot to do with understanding what is the framework that is out there in the world that we need to relate to, because we need to help our clients build arguments that they can use further within their ecosystem. So are we, with all the work that we're doing in creating reliable BIM data, facilitating for the decision makers to further our agenda, the things that we feel passionate about? We have to help them. The role of the architect is going from being somebody that gets an order on what kind of services you need from us to being a partner for the client, helping them navigate all this complexity of the EU taxonomy and of all the startups and all the tech that is new every day. They expect us to help them find the right level of ambition for that project, for that organization. So being ahead of the pack, for me, means that BIM needs to be something that we have under control. We have mastered this for many years now. So what I'm trying to do is to automate in everything we can automate. We have been collaborating with Anchor, which is a Norwegian startup, proudly, in a way that you can create this control center of all your data. Remove all the monkey jobs from creative engineers and architects, put them in the computer where they belong, and focus on what can we do that only we can do. And in the end of the day, all the discussion around generative design is still going to need our input to be meaningful. So it's going to raise deeper questions about what is valuable for us as architects, what do we want to see more of and less of. So let's not limit this discussion to technologies. We need to engage with every decision maker. And you would be surprised. Today I learned that there's actually a mentorship program where young people mentors the old. It's like, I'm down for that any day. So we have been exploring a lot of different technologies, and I know that it's difficult to navigate it. But for me, the biggest takeaway is like, let's not be so attached to the way how we have been working so far. Let's connect all this project data that we're creating in these BIM models to another whole world of information that could create patterns and value that we haven't seen yet. And let's just remember that we're just a bunch of people. That picture in the left are my colleagues trying to spell out A-Lab with their bodies. So all these technologies on themselves don't have any value. It's not about the tools. It's about which competences you need to map them with. And for us as architects, yes, we're not holding the pen. We're holding the joystick. Where in the ecosystem are people mastering these technologies and connect with them? And let's try to keep in mind the bigger picture, which is making beautiful cities that we're proud of, that we want to take care of. That's it.
Angie, thank you very much. I think that must be the most human-centric keynote I have ever heard from a CTO. We give her another applause for that, right? I have a question for you, though. Where to start?
Yes. Small.
Pragmatic.
I'm thinking each one of us has a unique opportunity. And for those ones that didn't have the pleasure to hear Annette's lecture before, she made us brainstorm with each other for 2 minutes to see what you can do. And I'm thinking, look at your own everyday work-life balance and see where are you actually not leveraging something that is available to you. Call it tools, call it processes. We have come a long way very quickly. So assess yourself, remove those constraints that come from pulling a carriage with a robot, and let's start with the passion. And then make sure that you find some partners in crime that can help you lift the competence level, and then find a client that is as crazy as you.
Okay, bottom line, find a client who's as crazy as you. I think that's a good ending. I have a gift for you. Does that fit with the final comment?
Yes.
The caricature, does it look like her? There you go.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
but that's not all. Here's the good one. So Andre did a keynote at the beginning of the day. Here's his book.
Oh, thank you so much. Very appreciated. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.